2024 is in the rearview mirror now. Mm-hmm. When you just look back on that in totality, and people ask you, hey, how'd 2024 go for you? Mm-hmm. Like they were in a freeze chamber and they didn't watch anything last year. How did 2024 sit with you?
It sat with me, I would say, along the lines of tons of progress and got right to a point where we had a chance to really get over the hump. And at the end, a disappointing ending because we were basically a drive short of qualifying for the ACC championship game and getting into the playoffs. That being said, I can't ignore the progress part because Miami's come a long way in these last 3 years, and it's led to another great class, and it propels us into the future. But I would sum it up like that.
Do you ever find yourself kind of having to balance? I mean, if you're a driven type A kind of person, the success is great, but you tend to focus on what's not right. You want to get what's not right fixed. But then at the same time, okay, you can do that behind the scenes. But when you're front-facing, when you're at a press conference or when you're talking like this, you got to make sure that you're acknowledging, hey, we went 5 wins, 7 wins, 10 wins. That's linear progression. That's about as clear-cut as it gets. We're winning double-digit games, which we haven't done around here, at least collectively, for a long time. I mean, do you kind of find yourself having to say, hey, there's still a lot to scrutinize, but it's okay for about 2 nanoseconds to, hey, good job. We're better than we were 2 years ago.
I mean, I approach every single press conference like a team meeting. Like almost like a PTA meeting, right? Parents Teachers Association meeting, because you want clarity and transparency for everyone in the organization and the families involved as well. And how do you do that? You acknowledge the facts, you set goals and plans for the future, but you make sure that everyone is very, very aware and understands exactly where we are, where we plan to go, what's going to be tolerated, what's not going to be tolerated. So I think if you use that approach all the time, everybody is hearing the same message and gives you your best chance to stay within one culture and not deviate towards like subcultures and narratives.
When you're talking to guys that you're possibly going to get out of the portal, you don't have long, extended relationships with them a lot of times. And so you're having to expedite that recruiting process.
Oh, yeah.
You're getting to know guys in an expedited time frame. When you're talking about that stuff, non-negotiables, here's what is and isn't tolerated here, like it's a competitive environment. You're trying to get them. The clock's ticking. How do you make sure also we've delivered that, we've disseminated that message? They check those boxes as well.
I think our players play a big role in that particular area because they let them know exactly what's up. And I still think recruits and prospects, they get more out of talking to your players and actually speaking with the coaches. And look, I've never been involved in speed dating, but this has got to feel like what speed dating is like. You've got to get everything on the table. It's got to be a mutual agreement. You got to see things a certain way, and you've got to prepare to go to work together. It's got to be a partnership as opposed to a verbal commitment, a pledge, so to speak. And like you said, it's scrunched, and the only way to find out is when things start happening live. But you do a ton of research. You try to get with people that you really trust and know something about that particular person, and you go directly and hard at the questions and the things that you cannot compromise, see where they sit at the end of the visit.
I mean, I can't ask about the portal without asking about Carson Beck. Mm-hmm. You guys, this time last year, I'm walking the halls and you're telling me, Cam Ward, man, everything we hoped he would be and then some. Wait till you see him this fall. Well, he played at a Heisman caliber level all year for you guys last year. So then you go get Carson Beck, probably a much different personality type than Cam Ward, but a guy you're once again hoping can come in and take that job by the throat and, do what you do during the season. But there's also the health piece of it with him coming off injury. So as much as you can tell us publicly,
sure,
where's he at right now? And what's the, sort of meshing of him with this program been like?
Well, the first part that's really encouraging for us, he's almost at 100%. And I'm talking about maybe a week away from being there. I mean, he's been throwing for weeks now. He joins our team on Sunday. And everything is full throttle. There is no limitations for him, and he looks great. And in terms of, he is different than Cam, personality-wise, but not from a drive and determination side. And I think that really hit us strong in that very short process with Carson. His knowledge of the game speaks very loudly of a guy that has been prepping his entire life. And I also think we brought in a person that has a lot to prove, but more in the sense of winning, more in the sense of team, than anything else. Like, I think he really understands clearly, after what he's been through in this college football journey, what's important, right? And what's important as it relates to the next level, because Cam's a great example. Everyone knew Cam Ward could throw the football well. Everyone knew he was accurate, he could improvise, make plays. But people wanted to see Cam Ward help change the trajectory of a program and win, right? And not be concerned with accolades. And Cam is not. Cam couldn't care any less about an award, a presentation. It's obvious in the draft. Like, he just wanted to hear his name, what time's the plane leaving, when do I land in Tennessee, and when do I get the playbook? And along those lines, there's a ton of similarities with him and Carson. And both their knowledge of the game, their knowledge of the run game, their knowledge of the protections involved in every single concept that we have, that has me as a former offensive line coach really fired up. And then the reasoning behind his move to Miami. So he wants to be pushed. He's not going to be disappointed. He'll get plenty of that here, and he's going to be surrounded by guys that are like-minded, that want to be elite at what they do and that they want to win big.
I think what you were talking about there is sort of it's like the DNA of a transfer. It's the behind the scenes, the making of the sausage, so to speak, of the way that happens. But the public just gets to see the headline, Carson Beck's going to Miami. But you get to be a part of every step of the way, beginning to finish. What is it like when it first becomes apparent, hey, there's mutual interest here, and those first conversations happen? What are you talking about? And I assume on his side, if he were sitting right next to you, I could ask him, what are you trying to learn from them? What's he trying to learn from you? Like, what are those early initiated conversations like?
The very first one is, can we actually have a conversation? Because if we can't even connect on a very simple, superficial basis, it might be hard to connect on a deeper level, right, and go from there. So everything at first is getting to know somebody. You can't trust or respect someone unless you know them, and you can't really know them unless you invest time in them. That was a really small window, really, really short, really small. The people that I know really well and that I have enough trust in spoke the world of him as a person, as a competitor, as a player, a team guy that's willing to do whatever it takes for a team to win. And so I think his natural immersion into the locker room after a Heisman candidate just left was something that, you have to keep, okay, let me see how this is going to look, right? Because you had a really popular guy that was really outspoken, and all of a sudden, a couple, week process has culminated in the signing of a player that's going to be under a lot of scrutiny. And it didn't take long for his teammates to realize, this is a dude. This guy's not here to BS, to mess around. This guy's here to win, and he's a team guy, and that's what we get. That's the vibe that we feel with Carson and the rest of his teammates.
You guys made a change at defensive coordinator, and it just reminds me how conflicted I felt watching you guys last year. I'm watching Cam Ward do his thing. I'm watching you guys score 35, 40, 45 points every week, but I'm also saying they better score 35 or 40 or 45 because it's needed, because you're having trouble stopping the other team. So that's the other half of this thing where you brought in Heatherman from Minnesota, and I'm interested because I haven't asked until now intentionally, what did you see in him and what did you identify before you went and made the hire? What did you identify about defense here that needed to change aside from just, well, we need to play better? How did you drill down? What were the specifics?
No, that's a great question. We lost our way last year because we opened the season playing really good defense. We communicated well, organized, lined up well. We suffered a couple injuries in an area where we weren't really deep, but that shouldn't be the result after losing a couple of guys. We lost our way. That's what happened. And it came in the form of communication, alignment, and assignment, which the simplicity of that makes you play fast. So we went from playing fast and physical to being uncertain and losing a step and playing slow and looking confused. And it was painful because that's a generational offense. That was made for TV type of stuff right there. And at the very end, again, we're there, okay? That might as well be this. You're not there, and we recognize that. So we recruited this team to be a 4-down aggressive defense, okay? And in Coach Heatherman, actually, and I hate to compare people, just saw a lot of what Miami saw in Greg Schiano back in 98, 99, which was a guy who was not only a high level of knowledge, level of expertise, but a system that kicks ass. A system that's very aggressive, that communicates well, that's very sound, that gives you very complicated looks on the back end, that disguises things well on the back end and can play you in base, can play you with movement, can bring pressure, can simulate those pressures and still create situations for the offense that are much more difficult. I think last year we were very easy to figure out, especially after Game 3 and Game 4. I also love the fact that Coach Heatherman is a tough-ass son of a gun, and he's exactly what we need.
I know sometimes, let's say things don't go the way you want it to during the season. Sometimes you'll get to December and a guy will tell you, man, we had a good idea it was headed that way in spring and then August. Other times you'll have a guy say, I didn't really think it was going to be that bad. Like this or this or this kind of surprised me. Mm-hmm. Defense for you guys last year, which side of that fence did you fall on?
Oh, I don't think anyone envisioned it going, that sideways. Now when we lost, Damari got hurt. Jadis was playing his best football. Those were our two big physical, playing man-to-man ball, back there on the back end. And when they were nicked up, when they were injured, it became a slippery slope. It went downhill fast. But I still don't think that it shouldn't have been, to the level it got to. Now, again, one thing I don't want to do, I don't want to say, hey, this coordinator or that coach or that coach. At the end of the day, man, you win together, you lose together. And I always look at myself and say, you know what? I maybe should have done this for the coordinator, or maybe should have brought him another assistant. Maybe should have helped him change something, But one thing for sure, when there's a chance to fix it, you fix it. I didn't think during the year was the time. I don't think during the year trying to fix it that we had enough answers to make a complete change and overhaul. But it was nowhere near standard. It affected us in a big time negative way. So a change had to be made, and we move forward.
You and I are talking right now. It's May 2025. Mm-hmm. Recruiting's pretty hot right now. Mm-hmm. It's not the time of year where we can mention specific names, but in a general sense, things have gone really well for you the past 24, 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And people at home, they check recruiting rankings, they watch on National Signing Day, but you got to do it year-round. And you got to immerse yourself in it year-round. You've always been known as being a guy who does that. So let's say you recruit me. It's you and about 3 other major programs neck and neck. I got my announcement coming up at noon Eastern time. You're making calls. You're doing all you can right up until the finish line. But what is the energy? Like, what are you feeling on the inside when the clock ticks down and a guy is about to make the announcement? Because fans know how they feel at home. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you feel as a head coach?
Find a way, and the announcement is, I guess, the conclusion of the first and second quarter, and then the rest of the calendar year till signing day is halftime, third, fourth quarter, and overtime. Get it done. Just go compete. Do all the things that the mentors that I played for, coaches I played for, taught me to do. Just go and don't settle and find a way to get it done. So, but also, again, be genuine. Be passionate, intense in a genuine manner. Don't BS. Don't go the negative route. That stuff. I don't think that stuff's ever worked. Maybe for some people, I don't know. But just go, man. It's that simple. Just go.
You find throughout history, like when you've been around high-level recruiting staffs, when you've put together a high-level recruiting staff, there's always the implication out there. Anytime a program would land a kid, the rival fans of the other programs are going to either try and downplay it or, well, we'll see come signing day, or, well, they bought the kid, or it's everything but, well, they just out-recruited us. You can hear that occasionally. It doesn't really affect how you go about your business. But do you sometimes hear the outside noise or outside opinion on how a recruitment went? And you're on the inside, you know how it went, and just kind of say, all right. It does at least, it would make me laugh every now and then when I listen to it.
I could imagine some of the things that are said out there. I just, I don't know what value that type of noise or people really have. Actually, I guess the value lies in the fact that you can take your son, you can take a prospect and say, you see all that noise and trash? There's an example of what's irrelevant in life and in processes of hard work. That's maybe the only value to it. And I think you could also take a parent and say, look, your son is a high-profile guy. This is great practice, because when you're playing in college and you miss a tackle or you throw a bad pass, or when you're onto the NFL and you enter a certain city and, I mean, they're going to throw tomato cans at you, at every stop they can. Like, you have to get used to what comes with sports, right? And but I guess that would be the only value, practice for it in the future, or just point out what's irrelevant.
I think, you deal with it as a head coach. High-level players deal with it. Just the immense amount of focus, attention, therefore pressure, therefore criticism when you don't do a good job. But there's like a protectionist mentality that society sometimes takes. Let's put an umbrella over everyone. We don't want anyone to deal with anything. And you're preaching the exact opposite message there of not only is it inevitable that it's going to happen, but exposing yourself to it every now and then is probably not the worst thing in the world, because, those elbows are rougher than the forearm for a reason. They've just dealt with more.
You ask yourself, why do you do this? And a million things could come out. Some people play for their family, some for the love of the game. I happen to love football aside from, my family and faith more than anything in the world. Couldn't live without it. And I think if anyone ever mentioned, well, I do it because of all this noise and attention, if that answer comes out, they got to get out. And this is not for them. I've never, I'm being very honest, I just never once have thought of that as any part of any equation, man. I had awesome parents, like insane grinders, like kick your ass at every opportunity until you got the job done. And if you didn't, God help you. It's going to be a reckoning. So that's what we do in my household. And I think it's my obligation to, besides other lessons, is such a valuable lesson is to teach all these guys the value of hard work, because hard work and being a great human being, that combination is just about undefeated, in life, and it carries over to football as well. So we're pretty simple, man. We don't overcomplicate things.
When you have a guy who walks in and you recruited him because he's got all the physical and intangibles that you want, but he hasn't had that hard work part ingrained in him since birth. And there may be some other non-negotiables that you think are in him that you could pull out, but he's not exhibiting them right away as a true freshman. How many times just along the course of your career have you seen a guy where you're stern with him, but you're also, I'm going to have a little patience because I trust that one day he'll get there, and then he finally gets there?
Yeah, you have to keep that in mind. These coaches, I'm always busting their chops. They're like those kids at Christmas. They want those boxes that say no assembly required, right? Just roll him out there and he's going to be an All-American. And that's not coaching. If that was coaching, there's no need for us. Take away the funny shorts and the whistles. Get out, They can handle it themselves. That's the beauty of it. Just in the process, you really have to note and understand, okay, why isn't he there yet? And are those things that we can help, right? Because if he's a good person and he's smart and he hasn't been exposed to hard work, but you do see it in him, and most importantly, if you brought him to practice and he watched the way we get after it, because we do, we get after it, and he's attracted to that, and all the specs fit, man, I'm willing to roll the dice that we could be great mentors. Because you know what? My sons, like I was growing up, I was missing a ton of things, and someone took a chance on myself. And I want someone to take a chance on my son, and whatever he does as well, for the right reasons, knowing that, you know what, it may not look like Francis Mainoa day one. It may not look like Pate day one, but over time it might look as good or better, and that's the beauty of development. And I don't think you stop developing, or you just never stop until the day you retire. Development is in every piece and opportunity throughout every single day.
What part of you, from playing days, but especially through coaching days up until present day, have you seen evolve the most? Or maybe what characteristic, aside from physicals, have improved the most in yourself?
I feel like it's a nonstop process. I feel like I'm learning all the time. I feel like, I come from the old school mentality where I was fired up when a coach would just absolutely rip me to shreds knowing that was going to motivate me to go harder. Coach, I wish you were in Pate, I'd kick your ass, but that doesn't really, translate well to this day and age. That doesn't mean that people are different. That just means that there's different ways to get to the mind and to the heart. And I've learned more and more that, everybody's really, really different, and you could still coach them just as hard and with just as much passion and intensity. But they understand, like, they're programmed different. They have different languages. They're, different kind of kilobytes. Certain things work for certain computers. They don't work for others. And just understanding and learning about that more and more and more. Because as coach, you're always digging into, right, technique, fundamentals, scheme, right, different processes. But the human interaction, this is about people, always has been about teaching people, learning from people, managing people, also being supervised and managed. This is like a give and a take in a lot of different ways. And if you go in there with the mentality and the conviction that you're always right and there's no other way, I think you have no chance. So I've learned to open up and realize, hey, I have great people. I could learn a lot from them as well, and they could help us win. They could help us get better. So I'm still growing, man.
Fair enough. Me too. You're talking about kind of the psychological aspect of players and managing them, helping them, coaching them, and how the psychology, the mental makeup of your average 18-year-old in 2025 may be a lot different than 1990. But that's always been the case. I would imagine in 1990, the same coaches were talking the same way about when they played in the 60s. So I would imagine it's always like an evolutionary aspect of just society in general. But because of that, you're talking about focusing as a head coach on much more than just X's and O's and scheme and who are we playing next week. You've really got to be in touch with the mental makeup of someone who is fractionally as old as you are and a generation that's much younger than you. And I would imagine sometimes sticking your thermometer in like the younger generation, you probably get some surprising results and see some things that make you go, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, every day I try to inject at least one 80s song in the warm-ups. No little AC/DC, never hurt anybody.
Never.
Start the day, right? But I don't think players change. I think adults have changed, and any faults or issues, I blame adults. I do. I think it's all on the adults to maintain the principles and values of football. That should never change, right? The sport itself, the integrity of the sport, that shouldn't ever have to be compromised, no matter if it's 2025 or 1974, We take a lot of pride in that. And I think when we sit down with parents and we always look at it as an opportunity to create a partnership as opposed to attain a verbal commitment. I think those are polar opposites, different sides of the earth, of the world, and that's done through time. And what, besides you getting to know them, they got to get to know you, right? And it's got to be to a point where a parent can put their heads down at night and feel like I can sleep knowing my son is in great hands. That player above, maybe not above all else, but right in line with, the trust factor, being able to go to you in a tough moment, he also has to feel that you're getting him better. That we're not just out there just getting tired. We're out there getting better. We're doing things to help you improve yourself in the areas of either technique or fundamentals, conditioning, eye discipline, the mental part of the game. In some way, shape, or form, players need to and should feel like they're getting better in your program. What are you doing with them in the off season? What are you doing for them in terms of nutrition, in terms of recovery, in terms of an assistive, a guest speaker, from financial literacy to life skills, you name it. Because that is our job. We are teachers. A coach is a teacher, an educator, okay? There's no punching the clock and rolling the ball out there and, hooting and hollering and just calling plays. Like that's not college coaching, in my opinion. So I think we have an unbelievable group of teachers, both men and women in the department. And they know that, this is Miami, man. It's like my heart and soul, 24/7. That this thing, like coming back here, was to make sure that Miami again attained a certain level around, college football and sustainable this time. And they know how I feel about it. They do. And I want to bring in people that impacted that will impact our guys like I was impacted here. So full throttle.
When you guys came out of spring, if you were to, go to lunch with me and I said, hey, what's the strongest part of that team right now? Where are you looking at on that roster?
I'd say I'd go a couple different ways with the answer. I wouldn't let you leave after just one question.
Sure.
I'd say the trenches really stand out. I'd say the secondary is the most improved. I'd say that the linebacking core has taken a dramatic step up, significant step up. I would say that the young quarterback room really stepped up. Really proud of those guys because they all showed they could play winning football. And we're really young at wide receiver, and that was the big question mark. So much production has left. What are these guys going to look like? And they did a great job. They're not a finished product. No part of our team is. Not even close. But I can honestly say this is now our fourth spring, again, progress. And that was the goal. Obviously the defensive side needed massive and significant improvement. But not only did they get better, I thought that everybody, every phase of our program, some more than others, but did get better. And as we head into, our team workouts starting on Monday, that's how we feel. That's how, and now through the transfer portal additions, we feel like we can take another jump.
Yeah. What, when you guys practice, are you still able to practice the exact way you want to, with the way depth looks a little bit different in today's game than it looked like 10 years ago when you may have been at Bama and you just got guys running with the threes that are future All-Americans at virtually every position, so you can practice any way you want to? Are you still able to practice the exact way you want to?
I think for the most part, yes. I think we're very mindful on some of the other days as the season wears on. I think your use of your Monday or Sunday, you got to choose which one you use. The use of Monday and Thursday is where you have to balance what's best for the team first and foremost, and tied into, okay, what do we need to do also to be prepared for this game? But Tuesdays and Wednesdays, that's full throttle now. Your team, these are still 17 to 22-year-old guys, and not everybody needs a gazillion reps, but young guys, they do. And I know that, I feel like sometimes we try to take away developmental moments. To be really good at football, you have to play football and you have to practice football, especially when you're in the trenches. And those guys need to work, and they have to be physical at the line of scrimmage. And the only way to do that is to practice bodies on bodies, right? And actually conduct live. When I say live, it doesn't have to be tackle, but whether it be in shells or full pads, you've got to practice football. You've got to practice technique and fundamentals against live bodies.
All this stuff happening right now. You could talk about the rev share thing that's coming right around the corner, actually. You could talk about potential changes to the way NIL is policed. You could talk about the different portal windows. You're going to go the OTA route. Is spring practice going to change in college football? All that stuff's on your plate, but yet you don't know how any of it's going to turn out. So as you sit here, you can't control that. But are there personal preferences you have as you look at the game right now versus, all the potential changes coming? Are there a couple of them that you're kind of rooting for? Man, I actually hope we do get this or that.
Yeah, I'm rooting for one portal window that lets everyone set their team for the spring. I'm rooting for developmental opportunities, maybe in the form of, I don't know if OTA is the right word, but something where instead of the players having player-led practices, you could do something of that nature, but actually be out there and coach and teach. Because again, guys need reps. And the good part is the guys that have logged a lot of reps, theirs is not as intensive. So you're being smart with your team. You're not trying to look for ungodly amounts of extra work. You're trying to get work to the guys that really, really need it. So I think that's really important. I like to get back in homes. Right now, the calendar has it so that head coaches are not getting in the homes of prospective student athletes, which is wild. Because when I first started coaching, I used to be able to go on the road at all times and recruit. And that's an aspect that, for a lot of programs, that hurts. A lot of head coaches are good evaluators and good recruiters. Man, I got a lot of other stuff. I don't know how much time you got on that camera. I could keep going and going and going, brother. I like the idea of maybe not spring inter-squad scrimmage, but I do like it in the fall, like a preseason game works for the NFL. I think that has some value to it. Don't know if we do it, but I like the option to do it, to get some other, different looks, different people. What else? I just like the fact that at the end of the day, man, on Saturday, Friday, Thursday, whatever it may be, the ball's still going to be placed on the tee and it's going to be kicked off and you're playing football. And football is always going to be football. And I get it. There's a lot of stuff and a lot of noise and a lot of, there's a lot of stuff, and some of that stuff is a pain in the neck, but I love football a lot more than I dislike all the other stuff that's kind of trying to mess with it. So football for life.
Same. Absolutely same. Let me get you out here on this. You're talking about football games on Saturday. Everyone gets to watch those.
Yes.
They're on big broadcast networks, and it's publicly available. A lot of the more fascinating parts usually are the parts people don't get to see. Mm-hmm. So naturally, there's more interest and intrigue, and I wonder what's going on over here or over there. Mm-hmm. And I've always found the feedback I get from fans is, well, what are coaches saying? So we give them as much as we can in these kind of interview settings, but also I think there's a lot of interest in what coaches are talking about most readily with each other, what those league meetings and those coaches meetings are like. Because on one hand, you're competing against all those guys. And you're recruiting against them, you're going to play against them, but yet it's also sort of fraternal in nature that, hey, we're kind of all in this together. It's our game. So what are those settings like these days?
I mean, they're necessary because at the end of the day, we're all keepers of the game. And it's our responsibility to make the game better. And the neat thing, I think people lose sight of this, all those guys sitting down, at some point in time, they were sitting in the player seats.
Yeah.
These guys just didn't fall out of the sky and were handed over a shirt and a whistle and say, hey, man, go coach. So they've had experience on both sides. And for the most part, you find truly like keepers of the game that want to make it better. Now, do I love sitting there with rivals and opponents? I hate that. I'm going to be honest with you. I've never said that publicly, but I don't like that. I don't like part of it's like, what are we doing? And you have to really check yourself and say, it's beyond that. It's about the game, and the game is still about developing people, about developing culture as a community, as a society, as a country. Man, football is as valuable as, at least for me, as for developing human beings as anything, out there. And we have to put all that other stuff aside for a few hours, I'm sure if you rang a bell, you'd have WrestleMania,
sure,
right in the middle of it. But you have to put all that stuff aside and realize, look, there's still, thousands of student athletes that could really benefit from this. I do want us, going forward as coaches I'm all about discussing some of the rights and privileges of the student athletes, but I want to get more into talking about the duties and obligations of them as well. Because in your own household, of course, you want to raise your sons, daughters a certain way, and you want to grant them rights and but you also want to teach them their duties and their obligations. With performance comes reward. With lack of performance comes consequence. With doing the right things becomes impact. With not doing the right things, comes this. Like that's our job. If you're really in it for the right reasons, if you're really a teacher, I think that has to be at the forefront of conversations, of regimens, of policies and procedures, and that's one thing I would like to see more from college football.
It's a good one to end on. We appreciate it, Coach.